Sometimes I still hear the echo of their laughter, sharp, layered, bouncing off the stained glass windows and the marble floors of the Iglesia de San Sebastián. The memory grips me sometimes at dawn, that half-awake state where a person's doubts creep back from whatever pit they sleep in at night. I remember the way the light colored the dust, how the old voices rose in the nave and the corridor, how little my hands seemed, balled tight against my chest. Let me set the scene for you. I was 23, still so tethered to my parents' world that my choices had the fragility of stolen bread. I had written 2 hidden things, a terrible first novel and a second one I hoped might not be so pitiful. I lived with my parents in a weathered apartment on Calle de la Amnistía, one of those old places where you could hear your neighbors' televisions through the pipes and the smell of onions drifted up from below. That summer, our parish priest, Padre José, started a Sunday program to engage the youth. That meant gathering the misguided or the melancholy in the church hall for vague discussions about the future. My mother, always eager to broadcast that she was raising someone respectable, asked me to speak. She said, "Tell them about university, about med school." That was the lie they loved. My supposed diligence and vague fantasies of practicing medicine, which soothed their anxieties at family gatherings and let them believe that faith, discipline, and their sacrifices added up. But I had already failed my medical entrance exams twice. Worse, I hadn't even really tried the second time. All I wanted was to tell stories, to write novels, even as my relatives smirked and asked if I'd make money writing about dragons. The day of the meeting, the day I will take to the grave, I walked from our apartment down towards the Plaza de Santa Ana, through the bustle of summertime Madrid, with my father's voice in my head. We don't have money for dreaming. In the church hall, the tables were arranged in a wide horseshoe. The priests and the older women sat near Padre José, who, for all his kindness, had the habit of looking through people rather than at them. My mother, upright and eager, gestured for me to sit at the front. Padre José smiled gently. "Marcos, you wanted to share some thoughts with us, didn't you?" My mouth was dry as winter bread. I looked at the faces, Anna with her crucifix bracelet, David with his soccer jersey, Clara, so clever behind her thick glasses, every one of them with a future somebody had painted for them. Around us, the saints' faces stared from their gilded frames, solemn as if they'd already judged. I opened my mouth. I'm not going to medical school." A few people blinked, and Padre José tilted his head. "I want to be a writer. I'm working on a novel. It's all I've ever wanted." The room was silent a moment, a heavy, shocked silence. Then someone near the back started laughing. Laughter like breaking glass swept around the room in waves. My cousin Pablo called, "You'll be the next Garcia Marquez, eh?" And the women who used to pinch my cheeks giggled behind their hands. My mother smiled, brittle as salt, but the corners of her mouth trembled. My father shook his head, jaw tight, and said, "I will never forget. Marcos, enough. This isn't the time for jokes." But it wasn't anger in his voice. It was disappointment, bone deep, that festered. People started talking as if I were already gone. A neighbor tutted. Alma, the choir director, muttered about fanciful boys and responsibility. When I tried to explain about literature, about voices and worlds inside me, I sounded foolish. Even drunk Ramon, who never left the corner of the plaza, shouted out, "A writer, as useful as a poet, poor your mother." The laughter returned, harder now, arms over shoulders, heads shaking. Barcelona felt farther away than Istanbul. Recognition and respect fantasies for those with richer parents, taller fathers, and better apartments. I left early, pushing past the murmurs and the polite handshakes. Outside, the blue sky seemed flat. My dreams felt like something I should scrape off my shoe. For weeks afterward, Madrid was a tunnel of eyes and whispers. My mother barely spoke to me except to list the chores I had failed to do. My father ate in silence, calling me el escritor like a taunt. The neighbors looked through me. I rented a small attic room in Lavapiés. My parents didn't stand in the doorway as I lugged my suitcase. My father didn't hug me goodbye. My mother pressed a 50-euro note into my hand, not meeting my eyes. The room smelled of mold, but the window looked west, and at sunset I could watch the rooftops go gold. I started working nights in a bar near the Reina Sofia, scrubbing tables, storing bottles, and memorizing the way people slumped or laughed, the way the city wrapped around itself at 4 a.m. Madrid, not as a shining marvel, but as a place where hope was always chasing rent. By day, I wrote. 5 or 6 hours at a battered desk with wobbly legs, describing, cutting, dreaming. Hating every third sentence and believing in every 10th. I submitted my work stories, confessions scrawled on faith, to every literary magazine that would read Spanish submissions. Rejection after rejection piled up in my inbox, each note colder than the last. I avoided my old neighborhood. My mother sent messages about insurance and family birthdays. The rare times I went back, I felt like a ghost at my own funeral. One autumn, in my 3rd year of that pulled attic, I nearly quit. My bank card was declined twice. There were mice somewhere in the walls, and the new novel I had poured everything into was rejected by every publisher in Madrid. I remember that Sunday clearly. Rain pounded at the skylight. Nobody had called in days. I lay on the mattress, heart hammering, and thought, "You'll die forgotten." No film, no applause, no gentle arms saying, "We always knew." But out of that loneliness, something fierce grew. I tore up the first 200 pages. I started again. Different voice, different rhythm. I wrote from rawness and loss, with hunger and with fear. Months passed. I started teaching Spanish to tourists to fill the gap. I went out less. I listened, watched. Everything I had, the press of train carriages, the clatter of rain on tiles, the brush of elbows on dirty tables, went into the new novel. I finished it at 3 a.m, the manuscript pages stacked in a trembling pile. This time, when I sent it out, I told myself nothing would come of it, and I meant it. I forgot to hope. 6 weeks later, an email arrived. "Querido Señor Ortiz, we are delighted." I had to read it twice before I understood. Hyperion Books wanted to publish my novel. My novel. My hands shook so badly I dropped coffee on the floor. When the book came out, I did all the small author things. Readings to half-empty rooms, radio interviews squeezed between segments on city traffic. But something took hold, a little water current of press, then a trickle. Then, miraculously, the Madrid Book Fair. My novel was translated. A review called it the voice of the new Madrid. I sold enough copies to pay off what I owed, and enough more to think I might, just might, make a life out of this. 3 years after my exile from home, an invitation arrived. The old parish was celebrating its bicentenary. "Dear Marcos, the parish would be honored if you spoke to the youth. Your mother is so proud," signed Padre José in blue ink. There, on cardstock, was permission to return a crack of the old world. I turned it over in my hand, expecting to feel triumph, revenge, some cinematic satisfaction. Instead, all I felt was uncertainty, like an actor handed a script in a language he once spoke. Before the return, I pressed the blue suit my publisher had bought me for my first international interview. I caught myself in the mirror, older in the eyes, clothes a little looser. 12 times I rehearsed what I might say. Dream big? Forgive those who mock you? Or Should I read from the novel pages born from their very jeers? The train to my old barrio rattled with Sunday emptiness. Late winter, Madrid raw and metallic after rain. My hands sweat like a schoolboy's. I walked past the old panaderia, the paint still peeling. I skirted the bench where Pablo and the others once laughed and smoked. The church loomed, its yellow stones patched and scarred, rain dripping from the gutter. Voices carried inside chatter, laughter, the throb of organ pipes. At the entrance, my mother stood waiting. She looked thinner, hair streaked silver. "Marcos," she whispered, voice breaking on the edge of joy and something older, regret. She reached for my face, cradling me as she had when I was small. "I kept every review," she said softly. She had. There were copies of the book in their apartment now, bound in careful plastic, my name bright on the spine. Inside, the nave was already bustling, the same faces, now 5 years older, Pablo, Clara, Ana, all with cautious smiles. Some did not meet my eyes, but I saw them glance at the flyer taped by the door. International novelist Marcos Ortiz, our own. I went into the side hall, where they had arranged 24 chairs and a folding table. A big standing poster bore my face and the cover of my book. Rows of parents, students, and older parishioners filled the makeshift auditorium. Padre Jose introduced me with a flourish. "Sometimes faith finds its own end," he said, and winked. I took the mic. My fingers left wet marks on the plastic casing. I looked at the crowd and found fear rising again, the sense I might be laughed off the stage,